The sharp crackle of flames erupting in the distance jolted John Parker from his Texas porch as dusk settled over his 200-acre ranch. A roaring blaze that sent a plume of black smoke curling into the violet sky, his rifle leaping to his hands as the coffee mug slipped from his grip, shattering on the weatherboards with a crash that echoed through the cooling March air, the shards catching the fiery glow flickering on the horizon. He stood tall, his heart pounding like a war drum in his chest, the burn scar on his forearm throbbing as he squinted toward the southern hollow, a shallow dip in the plains where he'd pinned a dozen cattle for the night, the lake's silver surface shimmering faintly beyond the rise, the lowing of distressed cattle and the faint shouts of rough voices cutting through the evening breeze. After yesterday's dawn victory over the cattle-thieving gang, where John's sharpshooting from the saddle had turned the tide, he'd hoped for a night to mend the ranch's wounds and Ethan's resolve, but now the air thrummed with danger. The scent of smoke, a harbinger of Grayson's jail-born wrath, and he'd face it with the steel of his 54 years. He stormed across the yard to the barn, saddling Dusty with hands steady from decades of grit, the chestnut mare snorting nervously as he swung into the saddle, her ears twitching at the crackling inferno. And he rode hard toward the hollow, rifle raised high, the wildflowers along the plains wilting in the heat, their colors muted by the smoke, his mind racing as he prepared to douse the fire threatening his land's heart. The air grew thick with smoke and the tang of burning grass as he spurred Dusty across the open ground. The western sky bruising with deep violet and crimson, the lake's edge a distant shimmer reflecting the flames, its calm surface a stark contrast to the inferno raging ahead. He crested the rise, overlooking the hollow, reining in with a thud that sank his boots into the scorched earth, his eyes narrowing as the scene unfolded like a nightmare carved from fire. The hollow, a natural basin where he'd pinned 12 head of cattle, was ablaze, dry brush and grass ignited into a roaring wall of flame, the cattle stampeding in a panicked circle, their hides singed, lowing in terror as they rammed the makeshift corral's splintering posts. 6 figures in dark gear darted through the smoke, their faces shadowed by bandanas, Molotov cocktails in hand, tossing them into the brush to fuel the fire, their laughter a harsh chorus over the crackling blaze. Beyond them, a 7th figure stood on the hollow's rim, a familiar silhouette in a pristine suit, silver hair glinting in the firelight. Victor Lang, Grayson's lawyer, a radio in hand as he barked orders, his voice a cold hiss carried by the wind. Dust and ash swirled in choking clouds, the cattle's cries piercing the chaos, and John's blood ran cold, suspicion hardening into fury, his finger tightening on the trigger as he chambered round, the click swallowed by the fire's roar, his breath steady despite the rage boiling in his veins. This was no random act. Lang had returned, fire's weapon to burn John out, and the hollow was the battlefield. He spurred Dusty forward, rifle raised, the smoke stinging his eyes and coating his Stetson as he charged down the slope, the wildflowers blackening under the heat, their petals curling into ash. The old war wound flaring with a sharp pang that shot through his leg with each jarring stride. The riders spotted him, their Molotovs pausing mid-throw, and Lang turned, his smirk glinting in the firelight as he shouted, "There's the old man. Light him up, boys." 2 riders broke off, their horses rearing, flaming bottles arcing through the air toward John. But he leaned low in the saddle, Dusty galloping full tilt, and raised his rifle with one hand, his sharpshooter's eye locking on the first rider, a wiry thug with a scarred cheek, his Molotov mid-throw. John fired, the cracks splitting the dusk, the bullet shattering the bottle in the man's hand. Glass and flame exploding in a fiery burst that sent his horse bolting, the rider screaming as fire licked his sleeve, dust and ash exploding around him. The second rider, a stocky brute, charged, another Molotov raised, but John shifted Dusty sharp, the mare pivoting with precision, and he fired again, the shot ringing true, the bullet tearing through the bottle's neck. The flames snuffing out as it shattered, the brute cursing as he fumbled for a pistol, his horse thundering closer. John didn't flinch, his aim perfect even at a gallop, and fired a third shot. The bullet grazing the man's shoulder, sending the pistol flying into the burning brush, the rider howling as he clutched his bloodied arm, his horse veering off in a blind panic. "Back off!" John roared, voice steel over the inferno, Dusty charging through the smoke as he swung the rifle toward Lang, who raised his radio, barking orders, the cattle surging in the corral, their hooves splintering the posts as the fire closed in. Lang shouted, "Burn it all! Finish him!" But John urged Dusty faster, weaving through the flaming brush. His sharpshooters eye locked on a rider, tossing another Molotov toward the corral, the flame arcing high. John fired. A single shot, perfect and true, the bullet shattering the bottle midair. The explosion raining fire harmlessly away from the cattle, the rider staggering back with a curse, his bandana slipping to reveal wide, panicked eyes. The cattle broke free, stampeding out of the hollow, and John rode through, rifle raised, towering over the chaos, the lake glowing crimson beyond the smoke as the flames roared higher. "You're done," he bellowed, aiming at Lang, who ducked behind a boulder, his suit smudged with ash, the remaining riders scattering, their Molotov spent, horses snorting in the heat. The crew arrived, headlights flaring, Frank's truck roaring up with a growl, mud spraying, Mary Ellen's mare beside it, shotgun gripped tight, Jake and Ethan piling out, Tom with rope, Sarah and Matt trailing. Faces fierce in the firelight. "What's this?" Frank barked, pistol gleaming, eyeing the blazing hollow, the scattered riders. John spat ash, voice rough, shoving a rider forward. Lang's fire, Grayson's hit, tried to burn the herd. "Stop him," barely. Mary Ellen swung down, boots thudding, her voice steady. "Stop him good, sniper's aim, John." Ethan charged, grabbing a rider, wrenching him up, voice raw. "You burned our cattle?" "I'll—" John gripped his shoulder, steadying him, rifle close, the lake shimmering below. "Enough, they're done," John said, tone steel over the crackle. "Ethan, round the herd. Jake, don't dying." Hargrove's next. Jake tossed rope to Ethan, who nodded, hand steady as he whistled Dusty over, mounting to corral the cattle. Trust forging in each loop, Tom binding the riders as Frank kicked a Molotov clear, Mary Ellen covering with her shotgun, Sarah calling Hargrove, Matt tracing Lang's radio. "Dan, South Hollow." "Six down, arson, Grayson's hit," Sarah said, voice crackling. Night fell, the moon rising, wildflowers charred, when Hargrove's patrol car screeched in, lights cutting the dark. Deputies cuffing the riders, their gear bagged, Lang slipping away in the chaos. "What's the play, John?" Hargrove asked, badge glinting, the breeze tugging his hat. John stood tall, rifle slung, voice steady, ash on his face. "Lang's inferno, Grayson's pulse." "Herd safe, they're not." Hargrove nodded, grim. "They're booked, arson, assault. Lang's loose, stay sharp." Dawn broke old. The lake calm, the crew gathered, coffee steaming, Ethan firm, the map marked with fire, cattle lowing steady. "Fire's out," Frank said, pistol gleaming. "But Lang's alive, watch the spark." John met Ethan's gaze, voice steel. "You held, herd's ours. Stay true." Across the ridge, a light blinked, binoculars then gone. He chambered around, the click loud, ready for the next blaze.